Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ambitious Appetite. Hope you came hungry because today we're talking about how I went from being a West Coast Cali girl to New York City woman. If you are someone who's interested in moving to New York or you're all about that New York living, keep watching and also be sure to like, follow, subscribe to stay updated on our future episodes. Awesome. So I figured I'd start off with talking about how I moved to New York City. Basically, how I moved to New York City was I have a godfather who lives in deep New Jersey, and he attended my sister's debutante, or what is it called? What do you call it? Debut. It's a Filipino party, almost like a quinceañera, but for Filipino young girls that turn 18. And basically, I think they call it a debutante ball, but Filipinos call it debut. Anyways, so my godfather, who I had not seen in years, shows up and is there, and he basically is like, oh, you should come visit us in New York. So obviously I take the opportunity. I was a junior in college at the time, but it was my last year. I had actually planned on graduating a year early as a double major. Woo woo. But I took the offer and I went to go visit him. And he took me around New York City. It was so fun. I really enjoyed it. And then all of a sudden at the end of the trip, he is like, oh, you should move to New York City. You can stay with us. For some reason, I didn't think too much of it. But because I had gone through a breakup, I was like, ooh, maybe I should go to New York and live there. I had an offer for being an assistant to like the COO at a tech company at the time, which sometimes I think about like, oh, maybe I should have took that job. I wonder where my life would be, but I love being in New York. So I love where I am today. Basically, instead of taking that offer, that job working in Silicon Valley, I was like, peace out. I don't know why I did a 3. Peace out. I'm move to New York. So fast forward, I actually lived in New Jersey, like deep New Jersey, like, okay, not deep for those that are from New Jersey, but it was like an hour and a half away from New York. And I was literally commuting an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. And I tell you, I would never do it again. Like the worst ever. I could not do it, which is why I moved out after a month and I moved to Jersey City. Had a horrible roommate experience, so moved out of there as fast as possible and moved to Hoboken because it was closer to the city. And I was like, at the time, I found myself enjoying Hoboken more than Jersey City. So I was like, okay, I want to be in Jersey City. The commute is just going to be better. I think that will just be something I'd look forward to, especially because I was in a studio. The studio, I was paying about $16.50 for the studio. I was paying it all by myself. I did not have any help. I was working a corporate job. But the problem was I was literally just working and sleeping and working and sleeping. Fast forward to about last year, actually. So I was living in Hoboken for about a couple years. Then during the pandemic, our lease was coming up in Hoboken, and I was like, ooh, well, I don't want to stay in our building, but let's look at other options that are nearby. So as I was looking for other apartments, I noticed that the price in Hoboken and Jersey City was either more than what I was seeing in New York, because at the time, everyone was trying to like leave New York. So I was like, ooh, we should check to see what the market looks like in New York City. So we went to see a bunch of apartments, and would you believe at the time we found 3 4 bedroom apartments in like East Village for less than like $4,000. I think it was ranging from like, if I remember correctly, 28 to like 35 for 4 bedrooms. I mean, it sounds great, but it was like more of a bachelor pad. Like it was clearly intended for students to like live in that space. But, I was like, there's 2 of us, 2 dogs. Maybe having more rooms would be a good option. But the rooms were literally tiny. They were incredibly small. And I was just like, okay, no. But we started looking at more apartments that were 2 bedroom, 1 bedroom, studio, and ended up finding this one, and it was originally on the market for $6,500. The pandemic pushed down the price to about $45, and then I negotiated and landed a sweet deal of $3,150. So I'm super proud of my negotiation skills. In fact, I've negotiated like every single rent that I've ever had. So I'm pretty proud of my negotiation skills. Anyways, so that's basically how I moved to New York. How has New York City changed since living here? If I think about like pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, the one thing I will say is definitely there's less people. Like no, I don't want to say significantly less, but it's noticeably less, which could be an argument as to whether that's a good or a bad thing. What's surprising is like you can walk around Times Square and not be arm to arm. I'm sure there's rush hour when you are arm to arm, but I remember when I had to commute to Midtown Manhattan, which is where Times Square is, for work, and I could not, like, just walking around during a non-rush hour time, you were basically like in a crowd consistently. And I had to like go into a different avenue or a different street to really get some air from people. I think what has also changed in New York City is I feel like there were more options after midnight. Like I remember when I was living in Jersey City and Hoboken and commuting into the city, there were so many things open late. And that's what I loved about New York City. Because I grew up in a very small town and things would close at like 6, 7 p.m. and I was losing my brains. Like I didn't know how to entertain myself without having to just resort watching a YouTube video or playing a video game. And like there's only so much you can do that like doesn't bore you. But basically what really attracted me to New York City was the fact that it was a city that never slept. You could literally do anything anytime, and that was really true. That was so true pre-pandemic. Now, post-pandemic, it's a little bit different. There are definitely bars and restaurants that are open later, but there's not a lot of stores that are open late. I will say I've found that there's a lot of shops that close pretty early, like maybe 8 p.m. But the thing is, you might be thinking like, well, Kim, it's 8 p.m. Okay, but I'm just saying that if you have had like a drink or two, and this might be a controversial opinion, don't come at me, but if you've had a drink or two, I feel like you're more likely to go into a store and be like, ooh, I'm just going to buy this because it looks cute, or I'm feeling like buying this. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but that's just my way of thinking. But I would say that is at least what has been noticeable for me. Now, it's the summer when I'm filming this, so we have seen an uptick in tourists, but not as significant as I've seen it before. And I'm going into a new topic that might be controversial, but I'm going to talk about how I think that living in New York is way better than living in New Jersey. Maybe that's a separate episode, but I'm going to just leave it out there. I have lived in Jersey City, Hoboken, and now New York City. And I can tell you 100%, I love it here. I love it here. But I mean, keep in mind, I'm from California, right? So I did not have the experience growing up here, so it could be different. But I really love it here. I'm obsessed with living here. I feel like there's so much to do, so much to see. I can literally walk to a different part of the city and feel like I'm in a completely different area, has a completely different vibe, and I love it here. So, I mean, if you've been thinking about moving to New York, I encourage you to do so just to like feel the different vibe. And the reason why I decided to move here anyways was because I wanted to open myself to a different perspective and really understand what it means to live in a different city. Because all I knew was California. All I knew was the Bay Area. And I knew that if I did not leave after college, I would not leave California at all. And I thank myself. I also have another friend to thank for encouraging to move here. She's like a world traveler, and in college she would travel to Spain, travel to different parts of Europe, and by herself. I had a friend who traveled by herself, and I was really inspired by how she was able to travel alone and go backpacking and do all these things. When she kind of just told me, just do it, I literally told myself, all right, just buy the plane ticket. And so I did. I bought a one-way ticket and I just moved because I was like, this is like a now or never situation. So I don't regret moving here. I love it here. I don't think I'm going to move back to California. If you're watching this and you're like, oh, I've been wanting to move to New York City, please use this as your sign to do so. I encourage you. Go buy that plane ticket. Okay, I will say though, before you buy your plane ticket, let's kind of do some thinking around like preparing for your move, because there are some lessons that I learned moving to New York that I think would be helpful for other people. You definitely want to have money in the bank. If you buy a ticket and don't have a good chunk of savings, I would probably say the more the better. But if you have 3 to 6 months, 3 months is really just cutting it close, but 6 months of savings. And by savings, I mean like 6 months of money to pay rent, plus food, plus utilities. I literally moved here with like $1,000. I was a broke college student, and yeah, I thought I could like vacation for a good while. No, I think it lasted like a week and a half, and I was like, ooh, I have to find a job. Thank God it only took me like a couple weeks to find a job, but setting yourself up for success, especially if you're going to move into a place by yourself, really making sure you have the funds to support yourself while you're here, especially because of inflation. Inflation is insane in here. Oh my God. I cannot believe the amount of inflation, or the inflation that has affected the amount of stuff that I buy. It's just insane. But I digress. Yeah, saving money is definitely something that I would encourage you to do. I definitely have encountered some culture shock moments, and some culture shock moments that I want to just shoot out there. Trash on the street. If you are thinking that New York City is so fresh and clean, you are wrong. You are wrong. That was like the first thing I noticed when I moved here, was like, oh, the amount of trash. Okay, in California, we have these things called trash bins and garbage dumpsters thingies where people put their trash into. No, New York City, trash on the street. That's it. And you know what happens when you have a lot of trash on the street? You get rats. Rats that are not scared of you. Rats that are not scared of your dog. Yeah. So that was definitely a culture shock. Another culture shock for me was it's not easy to talk to people. I have tried to make friends with both men, women, any type of person, and what happens is that they think you're trying to take money from them when you say hi and you're trying to be friendly, or they think you're hitting on them. I have not been successful in finding friends that way. Typically, I've found friends through work, through friends of friends. I've tried Bumble. I think I should give Bumble a shot one more time because I haven't had success with it. Those two things I think are not the only ones, but they're up there in terms of culture shock moments. So now diving into some tips on how to move to New York, right? If you're thinking about moving to New York, let me break it down for you. Okay, I'm not going to break down everything in detail, but I'll give you some highlight tips that I think should be helpful or could be helpful. At least it would have been helpful for me before I moved here. The first thing is know that you won't get everything on your checklist. So I got really lucky with this apartment because it was the pandemic when I found it. It has an in-unit dishwasher, why did I say in-unit dishwasher? Dishwasher, in-unit washer dryer, and we do have a balcony, but it's very tiny. We hardly use it. There's no view other than brick walls. It sounds great, but this apartment is literally less than 800 square foot. We went from a little over 1,000 square foot apartment in Hoboken to less than 800. We literally reduced a significant amount of space. The thing that I was specifically looking for was having an in-unit washer dryer. I cannot live without an in-unit washer dryer now. It has changed my life. I've literally lived my first studio, no dishwasher, no washer dryer. And basically what had to happen was I had purchased a cart, used that cart to put all my clothes in, go to the laundromat, which was literally 4-5 blocks down the street. Yes, it was just down the street, but 4-5 blocks was not fun. When I moved in with my partner and we lived in a building that had a washer dryer in the building, but it was in the basement, well, it didn't work half the time and it smelled really bad. So it was not the greatest experience. And you're probably thinking like, well, Kim, why don't you drop off your clothes and then like have them bring it back? I don't know what it's called because I've never used it, but a lot of people in the city have used it. I just don't want to. I feel weird when people touch my clothes. That is not me. So especially like my undergarments, I just feel weird. When we had found this apartment, when I found this apartment, I was like, oh my God, it has a washer and dryer. We have to get it. That was the one thing, the single thing I wanted. I didn't care how big, how small the apartment was. I just wanted the washer dryer in unit. My partner, though, on the other hand, wanted a dishwasher. He wanted a dishwasher over a washer dryer. I don't know. I don't know about you, but I know that a washer dryer is better than having a dishwasher. Because I grew up washing dishes, so it doesn't bother me. I'd rather wash dishes than not have a washer dryer. But he was the complete opposite. So we got lucky when we found this place because it has both and we're both happy. So just know that you won't be able to get everything on your checklist. That's for sure. Second thing, realtors are the worst. I mean, that's just a general statement, but my experience with realtors and apartment hunting is just very traumatic. So if you can, look for no fees, because oftentimes if they don't say that they're no fee, you have to basically pay month's rent to your realtor, plus put down a security deposit and pay your sometimes even first and last month's rent. So you literally have to have a crap ton of money when you're working with a realtor. At least now, because of the pandemic, there's a lot of listings on Street Easy, which is what I recommend you using. or no fee. But now that we're seeing a lot of people apparently want to move back to New York City, that is reducing. So if you can, look for no fee. Just know that sometimes realtors are the worst. Third thing, you need to be prepared when you are checking out an apartment. And what I mean by this is you need to have your application ready. You need to have proof of work ready. You need to have like bank statements ready, the whole shebang. Okay? Because sometimes people come there already ready, and as soon as they step in the apartment, they're like, I'll get it. And they just, that's literally how they get the apartment. So come ready, come winning. I know you can get it. Fourth thing is know which borough or neighborhood you want to live in. What I did when I was looking everywhere in Manhattan. I even looked in Brooklyn and Queens. But the reason why I ended up with Manhattan, because at the time, Queens and Brooklyn were more expensive than Manhattan. And I was like, ooh, can't afford Brooklyn, can't afford Queens apparently. So I'ma just settle with Manhattan. That sounds so weird, but it's so true. So I was looking at Upper East Side, Upper West Side, East Village, West Village, even though I knew I couldn't afford it. I was like, let me just see. Tribeca, literally Fide, literally every single part of New York City. I would say some good advice that I got from landlords, which is interesting, is just check the neighborhood out at night. See if you feel safe. See if you like the restaurants, shops that are open around at night, and you'll know if you like that neighborhood or not. Spend some time there before actually moving there. You'll kind of get a sense of like the vibe and stuff. And last thing, number 5, is this is just something I recommend. I think people have done without it, but I have recommended using a moving company to ease the pain. When I moved from Hoboken to New York City, I hired a moving company. Now, I will say there's a ton of moving companies, so do your due diligence, look at the reviews. Mine was a referral, so I trusted this person and their moving company. They did pretty okay, except there were a few things broken, which was unfortunate, but that's what life is. It eased the pain so much, because what I did basically was put everything as much as possible in boxes, leave the furniture out because they can wrap it. I've gotten so paranoid that I even wrapped all of our beds, like our mattress, with garbage bags just to make sure everything was protected. Because I was like, this is going to be a pretty long move. Only long because it was, loading the truck. We had 1,000 square foot of things that we had to now move into a 1-bedroom apartment. So it was a lot of packing and it was a big day. So when you are doing all of that by yourself, sometimes that could be very difficult. I've never done it, but I know that it was difficult already with a moving company who is supposed to help, and that helped a lot. But if you don't have a moving company, which does cost a couple of grand, right? You're going to have to carry things yourself. And luckily we have an elevator in the building and it was working at the time. So that really helped. But every single building that I lived in before was only a walk up. And walk up means that it only has stairs. So if you have to carry your mattress up the stairs and you're on the 4th freaking floor, or the 5th floor, or the 6th floor, or the 7th floor, oh my God, that's a lot. I would not know how I could do that myself. So if you can and you can afford it, or if you can save up for a moving company, I think that will be super helpful. That concludes our podcast for today. I hope you found this super helpful. And if you're thinking about moving to New York, I hope you do. And I wish you all the best. Thank you all so much for watching or for tuning in and listening to this podcast. Be sure to follow, like, and subscribe to Ambitious Appetite and all your social medias. Please let us know what topics you'd like me to discuss, and I hope I've made you either smile today or helped you out. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.